You mentioned something in there in tipping pitches. You taught me a decade ago what to look for when a pitcher is tipping pitches, but let's expand it on a little bit without giving too much information, of course. You have to go to the Lab BCS or Epstein Online Hitting Academy to learn that. But tipping pitches, um, how does a hitter start to look for? I mean, you mentioned Jeff Fry in there with Greg Maddux. I mean, guys were always, back then with some of the toughest pitchers, Maddux, Glavine, facing those guys,
Yeah.
especially if you're in the National League East on a daily basis, you had to try to find that edge, not just mentally, but physically as well. So how do you go about this? Is part of gaining that mental edge, finding the cue, if you will, in
Yeah.
when pitchers are tipping.
Experience talking with other people. Gosh, I remember I played with Kirk Sarlos, who was an All-American pitcher at Fullerton. In a big leaguer he coaches. He's the head coach at TCU now. God, he was so good. He wasn't even a hitter, but he would go through and by like the second or third inning, he would find something on the pitcher that day and be able to share it with the dumb hitters. That he figured if he helped us out, then we would score more runs for him. The next day. So. Yeah, sometimes it's how they hold their hand. Sometimes it's the angle of their hand or their elbow when they're getting a sign from the catcher. They know what they're throwing ahead of time, and maybe they pre-grip it. Sometimes it's the angle of their glove. Sometimes they'll flare their glove if they reach in to get a breaking ball. Sometimes you'll see the glove flare. Sometimes they'll flare the glove at different times or all the time. Remember, Dempster used to do this all the time because he was tipping pitches back in the day. So he would flop stuff around, so that you couldn't figure it out. But, amateur pitchers are notorious for it. For me, I can usually tell with amateur hitter or amateur pitchers, meaning high school and below, not necessarily as much college, even though they're amateurs, but they'll speed up their delivery. So I'll notice a jump or they'll speed up their arm action, taking the ball out of their mitt. And even though I'm not seeing anything crucial, it's different. Well, that was different. That was faster. He was rushing his breaking ball, getting his arm into the slot, or he was rushing his changeup. So sometimes it's speed. All of a sudden, their leg kick's a little faster, something like that. And you can be like, okay, that was faster. If you're sitting on a certain pitch, I'm sitting on a fastball, and all of a sudden I see the pitcher jump at me or lift his leg kick faster or higher. I'll be like, okay, that's a breaking ball. I'm not prepared to hit for that. And you can pull the abort, button, press the abort button. So little things like that could happen. I played with a guy in Missouri. He was so nasty. He was hard to catch. I'll never forget. He was my roommate, Ryan Jameson. He was so filthy. Like I had a hard time catching him. If I didn't have a good night's sleep and a good breakfast and we had an early game inter squad, he beat me up. I mean, everything moved. He had like a cutter, a slider, and a curveball, and then his fastball ran 6 inches the other way, and he used to get lit up in conference. I don't know what year, not all the time, but one year he just got lit up, and we're like, we can't touch this guy in inter-squad games. Like, we're not that bad at hitters. How is everybody jumping on? Anyway, every time he threw a breaking ball, he would just pop his finger out of his mitt. And we're like, how is no one chasing his breaking balls? They're so nasty, and they all came. And that's what it was. And as soon as he fixed that, boom, had a great year, and the Astros drafted him. So, tipping pitches, it's so like crazy because there's video cameras and all that kind of stuff. And pitchers are actually taught, to make sure that they're not tipping any pitches. But, once you get below high school and below, you can still, find a way to pick that kind of stuff up. And obviously at the big league level too, it still happens.
So people talk all the time about the 2019 Nationals team, and they debate whether starting pitching or the offense, Anthony Rendon, Steven Strasburg, they were at the center of that when they became free agents. Which unit, if you will, was more important and more vital to them winning the World Series? And I point out a guy, his name is Jim Cuthbert. He was the Nationals' advanced scout who pointed out in Game 6 in Houston that Steven Strasburg was tipping his pitches in the first inning. And then after that, Strasburg led the Nationals on the mound to that victory. And then, of course, in Game 7. So there you go, right there to your point about tipping the pitches and with the video and everything else, that great advanced scouts now have these tools in place where they're helping you get, as a hitter, not just the physical edge, but the mental edge when pitchers are tipping.
Everybody's looking for it now. everybody's trying to find an edge, right? And there's the game, is so fast and complex now that those little edges, make a big difference sometimes in a World Series outcome, like you just said.